you learn something from everyone, I think, no matter how good or bad, and you adapt it to what you want. But the important thing is to get down there and have something, make somebody feel something, whether they want to dance or they're digging into the blues, make them nod their head, whatever. I think it's important.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, and I grew up on the great classic rock and blues rock from the 60s and 70s. I'm guessing you did too. And after a long career as a professional bass player, I've made it my mission to teach others how to play bass. And now those people aren't just listening to music, they're making it. They're playing their favorite songs and having so much fun. Sound good to you? Just remember, you're never too old to groove. So let's play bass. We're going to take a little break from the new Tales from the Pit series this week when I put a hold on my weekly interviews. After 933 weeks in a row, I said, I'm not pulling the plug completely on the interviews. I'm going to make them more of an occasional thing. And that's when I started Tales from the Pit. True stories from my career as a professional bass player, always with a point or a punchline. This is one of those occasional interviews that is absolutely worthwhile. I was contacted by the folks about the 10 years after re-release of the album Ssssh, which I think was 1969, was originally released. And I've got an interview with Leo Lyons this week, founding member of 10 Years After, one of my favorite bands back in the early days, way a long time ago. Co-founded it with Alvin Lee and the guys, and they played at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1969. Kind of strange for a rock band. They were the first ones to do that. They were at Woodstock. You know the band. I'd love to change the world. I'm going home. Good morning, little school girl. All those classics. Leo has done quite a bit of stuff outside of 10 Years After as well. He's done a lot of producing and engineering and worked with UFO, Magnum, Wasted, Frankie Miller, Motorhead, Richard and Linda Thompson, Chevy, and he's done additional work on stage musicals, cartoon soundtracks, film and music videos. He had a band called 70 Split, and he had a band called Kick. He lived in Nashville for about 18 years. I'm going to jump to the interview now, let him tell his story. Here is my fascinating interview with founding bassist of 10 Years After, Leo Lyons. Enjoy. Hello, Leo. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I hope you are too.
I am. I'm so excited to have you. I mentioned before we started recording, I was doing a weekly interview every single week since June 15th,
Oh,
2009. And I took a break to start a different series. 933. You are interview number 934 on ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
golly.
The only thing is it's not a weekly streak anymore, but I said the interviews were going to be an occasional thing. I'll do them once in a while if I have a compelling reason to do an interview. And case in point, Leo Lyons is a compelling reason. I loved 10 Years After. I came about music very early. My dad was a rock and roll DJ in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And so I was all over the radio. I knew all the bands, I knew all the music. So I've known about 10 years after since I was a single digit boy.
Hmm.
So obviously, I want to talk to you about that and maybe about Alvin and about, of course, the re-release of the Shush album, which was
Hmm.
initially released in 69, and probably some other stuff along the way. But I want to
Okay.
start by asking you about you. What about your early days, your initial exposure to music? Did you come from a musical family? Were your parents taking you to concerts? Did you have brothers and sisters with records playing and things like that? How would you describe those early days?
Um, I was 5 or 6 years old, and I got into listening to music on my aunt and uncle's wind-up gramophone.
Wow.
And the first record I heard was Jimmy Rogers, the singing brakeman, not the blues guitar player, and um, Howlin' Wolf.
Were
and
those
and and,
78?
and, Lead, and, Lead, and Leadbelly, rather Leadbelly, not Howling Wolf. Leadbelly, Howling Wolf came later.
Were
on
those
a on
78s? Were
a
they,
on a wind up.
I'm sorry, were they 78s or were they,
Yeah, well, 78's on a wind up. Yeah,
wow.
that's how I do. I kind of come from a musical family that skipped a generation. My great uncle was an opera singer,
Wow.
and my grandfather was a singer too. But and they were both miners. As most of my family were coal miners, it was decided which one was going to go for the up to London for the lessons and the audition, and his brother went. So my great uncle became an opera singer with New York Metropolitan Opera and Covent Garden and whatever the one was in Toronto, and he was a CBS recording artist. So that's my musical claim to fame. Although, I listened to his records. He died long before I was born.
Wow. Excuse me, Leo. Your audio sounds just a little bit hot. Sounded okay when we
Okay,
were talking before.
okay. How's that?
It sounds about the same. Can you maybe lower the input level just a little bit?
How's that?
I guess it'll be okay if you just
Take it down more.
I'll
Yeah.
try not to get you too excited so you don't talk too loud, but
How's that? How's
yeah,
that sound?
I think that's a little better actually.
Okay. Yeah.
What what about your introduction to the bass? How did that come to be?
Well, skiffle happened in the UK, which is like bluegrass without the finesse. Lonnie Donegan, like a lot of people, turned us all onto that. By that time, I was actually playing a banjo. There was a banjo in the family, and I played that because I couldn't afford a guitar. But eventually, I managed to save up the money for a guitar, went for guitar lessons, and my guitar teacher introduced me to two of his other pupils, and I got together with them in a garage band. And when I went to see them, there were already three guitar players, so they thought, well, maybe I thought, well, okay, well, we need someone to play the bass. I'll play the bass lines on the guitar, and I can plug into your amp because I didn't have an amp. And I did that for a while, sold my bicycle, and
Wow.
bought a bass on what was called hire purchase. That means you put a deposit down and then you pay for it monthly or weekly. And that was my bass. And I took to it like a duck takes to water. I thought, this is for me. I'd never really played guitar in a band. It was just, other than that, playing the bass on a guitar. So it
Yeah.
was brilliant. And I don't know what it was. It was just something about it that I liked. Melodic notes, but digging into the rhythm and picking the band up and driving them. And that was it for me.
So I'm guessing you started listening to music a little differently after you discovered the bass, maybe zeroing in on.
Yes, I did. I did. I still couldn't afford a record player, but there was a minimal amount of music on in the UK then, Radio Luxembourg, a couple of hours every night. So I listened to that, listened to every record I could listen to. Anybody's house that had a record player, I listened to. A lot of American music. Um, Alvin's father was a big blues aficionado. He had a great record collection. I spent a lot of time around at his place listening to Muddy Waters and the Sonny Terry Brownie McGee, and a lot of Duke Ellington stuff too. So
Wow.
in between the blues and one thing and another, and of course Alvin and I were into Chuck Berry and Elvis and
Okay. That's what I wanted.
all that kind of thing.
When you sold your bike, you bought the bass, you started playing bass with the other guys. You
Hmm.
would have been about how old?
Uh, 15 or 16, yeah.
Okay.
Probably 15. I was still at school. They were working down the mines, and rehearsals were around shifts.
Wow.
Whether you were doing it earlys or late. And we tried to rehearse once or twice a week, and we played at relatives' weddings. Really, that was all we did. It was a hobby. It was fun. I didn't really think about doing it for a career until somebody asked me to do it.
All right. So you mentioned Chuck Berry. This is before the Beatles then and before all the 60s stuff. This was probably Elvis was probably very big at the time.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Beatles' career and what happened to them and what they did, they're pretty much the same thing we were running parallel. I didn't know them at that time, but we were running parallel. We were both out in Hamburg. We both worked at worked as backing bands for pop stars of the time when they were on tour. So it's very much a parallel thing. So we were going to be influenced by the same people, yeah.
Did you cross paths with the Beatles? Did you get to know each other?
I not well, yes, I did meet them, and not in Hamburg actually. We were in Hamburg in '62. They finished the night we started, so I missed them there. But I did meet them subsequently, and I played on a track on a record, was on a track on a record with George Harrison, but didn't really know them. I was a bit of a recluse really in those days. I moved to London to become famous, and when I could afford to move out of London, I moved out.
Well, you had that in common with George Harrison. He
Yes, I did. He was somewhere else, but yeah. But
uh,
he was a big friend of Alvin's, so I did kind of vaguely know him enough to play on a record with him anyway.
all right. Was there enough bass that you could access, whether it was on the radio or records, to have had any bass playing influences by that point, or was it still just too new with rock and roll and this new thing after
Well,
the
rock and roll was my influences. I mean, Bill Black was the man for me,
okay.
and I put my style down to that.
Well, he
And
was upright bass, wasn't he?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I do play upright bass. It's always been a love of my life,
Ah,
but I didn't do it early on, and so I tried to make my bass sound like an upright bass.
and
That, that
how'd that work out?
Well, some people said it was good. I mean, that's probably why I broke a lot of strings. I've got to show you something. This is my
Oh boy.
62 bass, and I would,
Yeah.
you know, slap it. So,
I've got to ask you because I have never understood why what some people call that an ashtray or whatever it is, that guard that goes over the pick.
okay.
Why in the world would anybody prefer to have that on their bass instead of
Well,
taking it off?
here's the thing. When it came out in 1962, they were emulating American cars with Fender with the collars a lot of the time and that beautiful chrome, and it looked fantastic. I I for years with 10 years after, certainly in the early days, I played with that on. One of the other reasons for it was because the idea was to reduce hum, pickup hum. It didn't really work, but that was one of the ideas. And it's only in the last, my golly, when you say only in the last 25 years that I've played bass with that one, you know.
Okay. Because
But
I don't know, Will Lee, and I think Marcus Miller. Not too many people leave that on, but I guess it's just a preference, or maybe it's a discipline. I want this sound, so I want to play closer to the neck. I want this
you
sound,
get
I play closer
you
to the bridge. But you have to choose one or the other.
yeah, you do get used to it. Now I play, the usual way with no pickup cover or bridge cover.
Yeah.
But then I did, and I wondered how, when I've seen myself playing, and I wondered how did you do that? How did you manage to do that? But you do get used to it, and it's
Okay.
a consistent tone. It's like a drummer hitting the skin in the same spot every time. If
I
you're
know,
an
but
if you're
I,
an engineer, you'll understand the reason meaning for that.
well, I guess my question is, why would you want to get used to it? Why would you? All right.
That's the way it was. It looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. All right. Looks
I
cool.
think that was it.
But
Yeah.
let's move on. Tell me about the formation of 10 years after. You had a different name before you changed it to 10 years after, right?
Yeah, we did. Well, as I was saying, I was playing with this sort of garage band, and we did a talent competition in between the films at a cinema. And this guy came up to me that managed the local band. There was a local band that was really good, and they were going to turn pro. And he said to me, "We're going to turn pro. Do you want to join us?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So, well, we're going to work for a year and save our money, and then we're going to go to London. So I joined them, and we were doing quite well. And then the guitar player's father said, "You can't turn professional. You've got to stick at your job," and blah blah blah. And he left. And we advertised for another guitar player, and that's when Alvin came in.
Ah.
Alvin and I, as I said, had so much in common. I was Bill Black, he was Scotty Moore. That was what we were into. We both liked Little Richard and Chuck Berry and all those people, Carl Perkins,
Yeah.
everything, those flavors. And thanks to his dad, Duke Ellington and Count Basie and all that stuff. So we got on really well. And that's, we, we turned professional and we went to London under the name of the Jaybirds. Ivan J and the Jaybirds. We had a singer at the time. Well, we failed miserably in London. We could get a lot of work from the area that we were from, but in London, no, nobody really wanted to take much notice of us. And we felt you had to be in London. The business was in London in those days. So you had to go down there, get a London agent, and the record companies were and this, that, and the other. But we failed and we went back. And to cut a long story short, um, the the guys in the band broke up. We ended up being three instead of five, and we were doing pretty well around the Nottingham area. And we had the opportunity to go to Hamburg, which we went to Hamburg in '62, and that's where we kind of got our chops together. An hour on, an hour off, 7 days a week, from 5 or sometimes 2 in the afternoon till 3 or 4 in the morning, and that's where we learned to do that. Then we came back to Nottingham. Our drummer left, we got another drummer, and we went back to London again, and we failed again. And then he gave up, and then we got Rick Lee in the band. We were still the Jaybirds. Rick Lee joined us. We went back to London, and by virtue of the fact that we got a job playing a band in a West End theatre play, kept us in London. And then eventually Chick Churchill joined us, and it was decided we needed another name. And I found I was reading an advert for a book called Suez 10 years after, about the 1956 Suez Canal invasion by the Brits and the French. And I thought 10 years after, that will be an interesting name, and suggested it to the band, and they all agreed, and that's how we became 10 years after.
But I thought it was also a reference to something that it had. Was it when Elvis broke out or when rock and roll just came to its forefront or 10 years after? Was it not 10 years after something? You just liked the name?
Just like the name, we said everything 10 years after whatever we can get, and some people say 10 years after Elvis, but it was from a magazine,
Wow.
into a magazine advertisement, and I'm one of the people who can prove it because I've still got the magazine.
Oh, wow.
Kindly, a fan sent it to me. Yeah,
Wow. I'm really glad I asked that question.
yeah. I mean,
So,
the other guys in the band won't remember. They were, but or some do, but
so what was the turning point? I mean, it sounds like you were doing all the right things. You honed your chops in Hamburg and then you were playing. I always thought of 10 years after as kind of like a blues band, blues rock band.
mhm.
And you
Yeah.
seem to be providing what was hot and what everybody wanted. So at what point did you turn the corner and start ramping
I,
up your
I
popularity?
think I think it was 9 years before what we were doing became hot. Up until then, very few people wanted it. That when the blues thing came in the UK, it was mostly in the small clubs. If you played a ballroom, they would pay you off because nobody could dance to it. They wanted pop songs.
Yeah.
And but what we found was once we started doing this blues thing, a few clubs started to like us. The university started to like us. But what really broke it for us, we went over to Denmark and Sweden, and Denmark loved that kind of music we were playing. And back in the UK, in the summer of, a lot of Danish and Swedish and Norwegian young people came over 10 years after. We've seen them. So when we were playing, if we're playing the Marquee, for example, all those tourists and students and from Europe were lining down the block and round the corner, and that was really what made the music press and the record companies take interest, thinking these guys are doing business. What can we do? And that was when we got a record deal, and we
Okay.
put out a first record called 10 Years After.
Yes, very
which was,
familiar.
yeah, 66 maybe. I don't know, 65, 66. Yeah.
Yeah, the iconic songs, Love to Change the World and I'm Going Home and Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. But there's another song that doesn't get talked about as much that I've always loved. My brother told me about it. We used to play. It's called Me and My Baby.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Swing kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the way you go to da 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 da
Da, 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 da. Yeah. Yeah.
sound
Da, da,
chromatic.
da, 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 da. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but this,
Yeah, I've subsequently recorded quite a few with my own band, 170 Split. We've got a few of those.
yeah, I
I
love
like
it.
that swing stuff. Yeah.
I was always thinking of taking the song Love to Change the World and then making a
Yeah.
video out of it with maybe some B-roll with some news and disruption and wars and stuff, and then showing pictures of my kids, my grandkids. I'd love to change
Yeah.
the world. I don't know what to do, so I leave it
Yeah.
up to you. Probably have to take out the line about the dikes and ferries for
Yes. Yeah.
today's.
Everywhere, everywhere it's kind of scary, military, reactionary. Tell me
Yeah.
where is sanity? Yeah. I rewrote the lyrics to it and we did I'd recorded it with my own band one time. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so tell me about the re-release of Shush. What brought that out? And you mentioned just about every country but Finland, and I think it wasn't it recorded? Some of it was recorded there. Some
Oh,
un
that was a live show in Finland. Yeah. Helsinki. We played in Helsinki.
Yeah. Well, what
And,
brought about? I mean, it's 2025, and that album was from what, 69 or something.
yes, yes, yeah.
So who had the idea to re-release it now? And
Our former record company, our current record company, I guess, but they decided to release stuff. They released quite a few records, but for some reason or other, they decided to make a big thing of this, which is why I'm talking to you. Normally, I do maybe one interview on a record release. Now I'm doing sort of, I don't know, some days one every 15 minutes. Like you're saying, it's been a long thing. And they really put some effort into it. And asked me, would you do some interviews? And they sent me a list of interviews. Which ones would you do? And I said, well, you've gone to a lot of trouble. I'll do them all. So not realizing, not realizing I wouldn't know what day it was after the first week or so. But yeah, so they did. When that record was recorded, it was the first time we'd moved from the establishment big company studio recordings situation of Decca Studios, who are famous for classical music, to an independent studio, which we paid from 4 track to 8 track. So it was a real big thrill for us, particularly for Alvin and I, and the enjoyment of it. We really wanted to make a record that was as exciting, if it's possible, as exciting as we felt it was on stage. And so that was our attempt to do that. And with 8 tracks, it gives you, you know, a better shot than having to bounce tracks down, have the drums and the bass all on one track. In the mono days, that's how it was. And so that's the reason for that record. And I quite liked it, although I don't listen to anything I've recorded. I can't bear to do that. But I had to do on this because people started asking me, what did you think of the sound? What did you think of that? And I thought, well, I better listen to it. So I have listened to it. And I think they've done a good job. I think there's a danger when you remix something that was recorded 50 years ago that you're going to try and make it sound 2025 and it all falls apart. But this held together and they brought a separation and clarity that wasn't on the original recording because of the way things were done. So I'm pleased with it.
Oh, you should be. I've been listening to it. There's some great bass playing on there, by the
Well,
way.
thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
really enjoy it. And on Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, you don't hold back. You give it what it needs, and it's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. It's off the top of my head, I must admit. I fly off the top of my head.
Well, but it came very
Yeah.
naturally,
Yeah.
obviously. You have, as you've alluded to a few times, a lot of other things in your career outside of 10 years after. Why don't
Yes.
you
Yeah.
tell me about some of the other things that you've done or what's keeping you busy now? I know you're a writer, you're a producer, you do a lot of
Mhm.
things. So let us into that side of your career.
Okay. Well, uh, sometimes I'm a producer and sometimes I'm not a producer because sometimes I don't feel like doing it. You know, that's the way it is. Um, I produce, and I'm an engineer too. So, there've been times when I've engineered on a record and not produced it, thinking, "Oh, nobody's going to stick the knife in my back if it doesn't, if it goes wrong, you know. But no, I enjoyed it when if I guess you've got a studio there, so you're used to recording stuff. When it goes well, it goes great. And if the record company get behind a record, then fantastic. But often you do a lot of records, a lot of great records, people do, and the record company mess it up or it doesn't happen, and they always blame the producer, not the A&R man, not the marketing, not department, not the band, not the songs. Just so I'd take periods out where I wouldn't do anything, and then someone would ask me to do something, and I'd do it, and then that's how it worked. Um, I got back into recording again because I felt like going back on the road. So I started writing songs. And when I said I want to go back on the road, I've got a band, I want to do some gigs. Oh, you have to make a record. I said so. I went back and started making records again, and that was a band called Kick.
Yeah.
And we released a couple of records, um, well received by a certain number of people, but we were playing rock music in the 80s when it wasn't really fashionable.
Eh,
And we'd go off and do a tour and it would go well. And then the promoters would say, "Oh, we'll have you back next year." And I'm thinking, "But in between time, what am I going to do?" So I started writing for other people, country music, which is what I like. And I
Ah.
started sending tapes across to Nashville. And I soon realized that I'd stand a better chance if I swam across the Atlantic with some tapes in a bag than posting. So I went to Nashville with some songs and walked up and down Music Row, got myself a publishing deal, and I became a staff producer. And then the thing was, I had to move to America, so I did. I moved to Nashville and was there for 16 years.
Wow.
Um, my publishing company, which was Don Schlitzer's company, Don's company, Don decided he'd had enough. The company closed down, and all of a sudden I was in Nashville without a publishing deal, with a changing music business. When I was there, songwriters wrote songs, country artists sang the songs, and that was it. Now it became, with the way the business is, records don't sell. Now you got to go on tour. So the record company wanted to find an artist that could write his own songs, and the writer, if you needed a writer, you had to write with an artist, so the number of professional songwriters in Nashville, i.e., those that were getting paid a weekly or monthly wage, went down at least 50%. So that business changed. So by that time, my own demos gave me the opportunity of, you know, doing other people's demos for them at home. And then I started doing gigs for publishing companies, doing their song demos, with some great players. And some of the singers, demo singers, of course, went on to become very successful. And I was doing that, and I was quite happy doing that. And then the 10 years after, flags started flying again, and would you come and do some gigs? So at weekends, I would be flying out on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, back home on Sunday. And I commuted like that for quite a while. Um, and that took me to really thinking about perhaps I should move back to Europe because I say Nashville was a different kettle of fish to when I first went there. So that's what I did. And I worked with the incarnations of 10 years after for a while. Alvin left. We got another guitar player in who I work with in my present band, 170 Split. And we've done I don't know, 6 or 7 records anyway. And we constantly toured up until last year when my drummer died. And I've just taken some time out because whether I want to go through it all again. We were a three-piece. You get a tremendous synchronicity with three musicians, and everybody got on really well. Nobody complained. Nobody had an ego. All the things that I've worked with great musicians, a lot of great musicians, but they have this saying in Nashville, yeah, but what they're like on the bus, you
Yeah.
know. And so I got a good team there with my crew, and everybody was great. And so I've taken a year out to reflect on where I'm going from here. Um, I have been writing a book for two books, actually, maybe three, in over the last 30 or 40 years, um, but never finished them. So I'm looking at that, and I've got some interest, but the publishing business, there's no money in. It's like the record business, no money in the publishing business unless you get a movie, get a movie out of it, movies. So I don't know. I've got some meetings tomorrow, in actual fact, about my book. So
Are you
I
talking
sh
about a memoir or a history of the band or what could you, three? So
well,
those have
I
got to be
want it.
different topics, right?
I want it to be a memoir. I want it to be about a kid that discovers music at the age of 10, tries to make a guitar out of a cigar box, has polio and ends up in hospital. My father was killed during the war, and it was just that thrill and enjoyment of music, following music through, listening to it, struggling to listen to it on a radio, and eventually, getting into music, having a career, being I don't know, the Forrest Gump of rock and roll in a way. And I've said it before, but I was in Hamburg at the time of the Beatles, swinging London, San Francisco, Woodstock, of course. The whole hippie thing, and travelled all over the world with it. And when I stand on stage and play now, there's a whole load of guys stand at the front looking at me playing, thinking, I could do that. I could do that. And I think I'm playing for them too. And so I owe it to them to tell what it was like exactly. I don't want the book to be, and then we played Woodstock and so, and there was this many people there, and then we sold that many records, and blah, 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 blah. I want to get the thrill of it all over, and the not so thrilling parts of it too, I guess. But that's my book.
I
Um,
would like to read that book. I really hope you will finish it.
well, I hope a publisher would say that. I've had some strange things from publishers. We don't think you've got a big enough profile. Um, It would be interesting if you wrote it as a novel. I mean, Jim Smith, Jim Smith, who played at Woodstock. You never heard of him. Never. I mean, it's crazy. And the other side of things, which has been very difficult for me, is um, going to sound cranky here, but it doesn't matter now. I grew up in a haunted house. I've always been psychic, so in between my musical experiences, I had a lot of psychic experiences. Um, and I started a book called The Reluctant Psychic, which I did have interest for, and then 9/11 happened, and every publisher disappeared out of New York City, and we never got it again. So I've done a few radio shows like Coast to Coast, and those things, that famous guy. I did a few of his shows, so I picked up that book. But the difficulty was trying to write a musical biography and put this stuff in between and make it work. So I tried. I'm kind of playing with that as well at the moment. I thought I'd write a book called The Split. You know, so it's
What's
like one minute I'm 5 years old, and then I'm sat in a dressing room tuning up my bass. Boom, 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 boom.
what's stopping you from finishing these? I think those are compelling.
Too
Absolutely.
too lazy.
Well,
Too lazy.
when
I get.
somebody
I've
says
re.
I write a book and I started writing my first book and then I was off and on and off and on. And like 3, 4 years later, I said, this isn't going to write itself. I've got to do this. And I finished it. And then I wrote 9 others after that. I had a publishing
Yeah.
with Hal Leonard for all of them. But
Okay.
there are easier ways to do it, even if you don't get a publisher this day and age. I got an email out of the blue a couple of years ago from Jim Pons, from the bass player from the Turtles, and
Yeah,
Jerry Jamot sent me his. Hey, I just wrote an autobiography, a memoir, and I'm trying to think of several others like that. So and people have approached me about writing their biography, as
yeah,
told to John Liebman. So.
yeah.
I just all I can do is encourage you to do it. I hope you'll do it. I, for one, would love to read all of those. And
Yeah, I've had a lot of encouragement, but not from the publishing companies.
I understand. Uh, you're a very interesting man.
I've had I've been very lucky. I've had some great experiences and some unusual experiences, and the people that know me say you've got to write them down. My family say you've got to write them down, and I'm what am I, 82 in a couple of weeks' time. I'm thinking you better get on with it, or somebody's going to be channeling me, aren't they? Leo Lyons is here. He's going to tell you what he should have told you before he passed over to the other side. You know,
You're a deep thinker, obviously.
oh God,
Hey,
yeah,
let's switch gears and talk about something a little more mundane. You showed
of
me
course,
one of your basses, and without taking each bass off and showing me, just
yeah.
give me a general idea of your primary go-to bass
Okay.
and
Well,
anything about
yeah.
amps and gear and things like that.
Okay. Well, the bass that I showed you is my original 1962 jazz bass, which became so valuable that I couldn't take it on the road, and my crew freaked out if I did.
Yeah.
So a company called the Bass Centre in London
Oh yeah.
made a what do you call it? A Leo Lyons signature bass or heritage bass. So I'll
What's
show
the
you
guy's
that one.
name? The guy's name is Barry, right? Barry
Yeah,
Morehouse or
Barry Morehouse. Yeah, and this is it.
yeah,
It's,
that looks like a J bass.
yeah, yeah, and that's the Leo Lyons heritage signature bass. So that's the bass I use a lot of the time. But I've got 26 basses, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and I like playing upright too. So, but that's my main bass. And then being a three piece, sometimes you need that low B.
Okay.
So I occasionally a couple of songs in the 170 split set, I'll use a five string.
What kind of five string?
I can show you if you like. These aren't all my basses, just a few that I use regularly. That's a Warwick five string.
Oh, Warwick, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
In Machnerkirchen, Germany. I've been to their factory about 3 or 4 times.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a few Warwick basses. I've got this one I quite like.
Is that also Warwick? Is that the star bass?
Yeah, it's a four string. I've got a five string as well, but
Yeah.
I'll play that.
Nice.
Mhm. I could go on.
They used to have a bass camp every year. They invited me.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
I,
they did.
I
That's
went
right.
like 3 times. Oh, hanging around at with dinner with there's Chuck Rainey and there's David Ellefson from Megadeth and there's
Yeah,
Robert Trujillo from Metallica and there's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh those were great times.
I
What
think they've cut back a little bit on those now,
Yeah, they
but
don't do those anymore. But
yeah.
what about amps? What kind of amp do you play through?
Well, currently in the last 3 years, I've been using Warwick gear, 12 1200 watt amp, and I don't think I've got one here. No, got one somewhere in a cupboard. But and I'm using a 4x6 cabinet and a 12-inch cab.
Are you playing some pretty big venues? Because that's a lot of
Yeah,
power.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've interviewed Jonas Hellborg a few times, and
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. He had that rig. Yeah, I've played through his rig. It's impressive, but my golly. I mean,
yeah,
the reason I've gone down to small rig is because I just started to feel guilty about my crew. I did an interview and I was saying, you know, I what had I got? I don't know, Mesa Boogie, 810 cabs, And I was saying in the interview, "Oh, it takes a couple of guys to carry it." And one of my crew guys said, "It takes four." And I thought, it's ridiculous. You know,
Yeah.
most of us use in-ear monitoring now. I can get a great sound out of four 6-inch speakers and a 12-inch speaker, and it's all mic'd up. So,
It's
and
funny.
de-eyed. Yeah,
My wife and I saw Chicago last night.
yeah,
Eric invited me. They don't use amps. Nobody uses amps in that band. They all
I
had
know.
years. But the reason I mentioned Jonas is because I know he was very instrumental in designing a lot of those amps for Warwick.
Yes, he was.
I
Yeah,
did play his bass one time. It weighed like 40 pounds or something right on my shoulder. Oh my,
yeah, yeah.
how he does it.
He
Uh,
had some speakers as well, didn't he? Hellberg speakers. I,
yeah.
I, I know. I was doing a rehearsal and I borrowed one of his rigs, and it sounded good, but you know,
Yeah.
we I think guitar players like to have that, stack of Marshalls or whatever it is,
Yeah.
whereas
Yeah.
bass players are a little more inventive. Um, I, Perhaps not in the metal thing. Maybe you can have a little amp or DI everything and have a big wall of cardboard amps, which that's what, the metal guys want to see. But I thought, yeah, nice compact that I could even carry the rig myself.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And of course, I've got a camper as well.
What? I'm sorry.
A camper, a bass. You
Camp.
familiar with those?
I don't think I am. No.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't put it out of the rig, but out of the rack, but
all right.
you sample your own bass sound
Oh,
into it and it replicates it.
wow. That's that's an interesting concept. I'm gonna have to look into that. What
Yeah.
kind of strings do you play?
Um, Bass center, bass center. I think 46 or 50 years into my career, I got an endorsement deal.
Congratulations.
That long. I used to use D'Addario
Yeah.
strings, and but I D'Addario. What was the other? What's the very early one? I can't think of what they were now.
Roto
Um,
sound?
no, no, even before Roto Sound. I'd have to look on my own website to find out what it was now. That doesn't matter.
I don't know. I was fortunate. I got a tour of the Roto Sound factory in
Okay, yeah.
England. Jason Howe and
I've got it. Labella.
oh, Labella. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I use 760 Labellas.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
They've been around for a long time.
yes, that's what I used all my 10 years after career.
Really?
And then I started, I got a deal, an endorsement deal, and we're using these um, Bass Center Elites, they're called. Um, 45, 65, 85, 105. And they work well for me. And I'm still using round wounds. Although I had flat wounds with 10 years after.
That's what I was going to ask you. The Labellas, were they flats?
They were, yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was two kinds of flats, I think, and then there were the flat ones that were smooth, and then there were the flat ones that were you could see the winding on them.
Okay. Now we're
Yeah.
really geeking out into bass
Oh
stuff.
yeah, yeah. It's weird. Strings and amps.
Yes. I want to.
Of course, that's not the only amp I've got a lockup full of amps. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, if you have 26 basses, I bet you have
yeah.
a
I think
great.
there are 5 amps in here somewhere. Yeah.
I want to switch gears again, and a couple other things I want to ask you about. One is about people who want to learn bass and play bass. For
Okay.
BassPlayersOnly.com, this website is a bass instruction site. And
Okay.
I've got it's for people that really. I grew up on the great classic rock and blues rock from the 60s,
Hmm.
and most of the people in For Bass Players Only grew up the same way. And
Yeah.
a lot of them are, over 50, and I joke, I say most of them are even older than over 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not trying to make careers out of being a professional musician. They want to play some classic rock riffs with their buddies. They want to play some
Hmm.
blues shuffles. They want to play maybe a little funk R&B,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe some walking bass. And
Yeah.
sometimes when we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, arthritis or tendonitis or those kinds of things creep in. And I'm telling you all this just to give you a context because what I
Yeah.
want to ask you is what advice can you impart to somebody like that who wants to learn bass? What do you think they should be thinking about? What kind of goals should they have? What kind of mindset? Anything at all along those lines. I just want to get your take on that. What do you have to say to those folks?
Well, the important thing is to enjoy what you're doing. Really enjoy what you're doing. Um, I mean, you did a synopsis of a good way to start learning is to learn walking bass, to, to to learn the scales, to have a bit of an idea about chords, so first, third, and fourth, so first, third, and fifth, and seventh, and so on, and flat and thirds. That gives you the chord, the minor chords and the major chords, and work around them. The Dorian scale or the melodic minor scales if you can get into it and then move around it. I'll show you. Would that be?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
So,
Oh, I can't hear the bass. Sometimes that happens with Zoom.
oh well, not to worry. But
It
but
looks very impressive though.
well, yes, and that's why I pulled it up. But I could probably jack it up, but then we'll be all over the place with the vocal level. But it's a question, and then listen. I mean, you may just want to do root notes to start with, but then that's good to work with a drummer to get your timing. So that's an important thing for a bass player to get that timing, to get that feel. Um, and you could go into a lot of technical things, and I could probably show them if you could hear it, but that's what I did. It was easier when we were growing up, and when I was growing up, even though the recordings were bad, the bass parts you could hear what they were doing because in those days rock and roll was the rhythm section was bass led, not drum led. Nowadays it's drum led. So, and the bass has got to fit in with that. Whereas before, it was the walking boom, 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 boom. And so you'd get those grooves in your head and you learn those grooves.
Yes.
But I'd also say, watch YouTube. Don't get het up on. Don't try to play like an absolute um, master, but just try and listen to watch some of those things, and you can, no matter how good you are, you're always going to learn something for sure. And but working between those pentatonic scales and things like that, and develop your ear. And if when in doubt, hit the root and the octave, and just work on the rhythm,
Yeah.
and then you fours or eights or whatever.
Yeah. Never heard of a bass player getting fired for playing too many roots.
No, no. Usually they prefer it.
Yeah. Hey, the only thing that scares me a little bit about what you said was about YouTube, because this comes up a lot, and there are some incredible feats of mastery that you can find on
Yeah,
YouTube, as long as the people watching understand that that's not what people want or need in a bass player.
you're
Can
absolutely right.
can you lock in with the drummer? Can you set the foundation for the band? Can you play a blues? Can you make the music feel good? If you can do this, that's very impressive. But as long as you have that understanding going in, that
You're right. You're right. Doesn't mean a thing. You can learn the tricks, and because it's communicating with people. It's getting a feel. Uh, when my publishing company folded up, and I went on tour for a short while with a blues guitar player that played with Buddy Guy, and we did the van thing up and down America for at weekends, and I quite enjoyed that. And what I found I could do was change the groove and get the people dancing to do something different. And that is the thing. You've got to get into those people so you can get them to feel something and support the singer, support the vocalist.
yes.
Um, I think that's why most bass players stand at the back and most guitar players stand there in the, you know, I'm here
Yep.
kind of thing. But yeah, so that's right. It's important. It's important to support the band, important to support the singer. And if you get to do a solo, then great, you can show your licks. But
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of bass players that I've been, in the time the pop and tap thing came out and I was recording a lot of things and
Yeah.
guys would come in and they'd have this pop and tap technique down to a thing. And I thought, wow, that's really impressive. And then we come to another song and all of a sudden they can't play it. They can't do a chord change. They can't play the groove.
Yeah.
So, a lot of one horse ponies in a lot of situations like that. It's good. You learn something from everyone, I think, no matter how good or bad, and you adapt it to what you want. But the important thing is to get down there and have something, make somebody feel something, whether they want to dance or they're digging into the blues, make them nod their head, whatever. I think it's important. And support the vocalist. If you're doing a melodic bass, things don't get in the way. Don't think, oh, there's a break here. I can do my really flash bit. I mean, I've worked with drummers like that. Why are you doing a drum fill across a vocal hook line? Don't.
Yeah. Look at the big picture. It's your
Yes, yes.
musical maturity and your creativity and your sensitivity and all those things. That's what we're all about at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. All the things that you're saying right there. So,
It is, but I have a funny story about that. 10, 15 years ago, I was asked to produce, Leslie West asked me to produce a record for him. And it was at the time that he was not well. So we got a load of session guys in, and we're all set to go. And then Leslie said, "Oh, I want you to play bass as well." So I said, "You didn't ask me to do that. Okay, I'll play bass." So and then we're all set to go, and Leslie said, "I feel ill. I can't come in." So I said, "Okay, we have another guitar player. We'll track it. We'll track it, and you can come in and do your bit and tell me the keys, and we'll do it." Which is what we did. And I was coming straight, I was in Nashville by that time and working on Nashville records. And so the bass line I put down was I'm going to do this for the verse, and I'm going to do this for the bridge, and I'm going to do this for the chorus, and then I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to stay well clear of interfering with the vocals, etc., etc. I did. I put them all down. And Leslie came in and I played them back to him. And I said, "What do you think, Leslie?" And he said, "Yeah, it's good, but I thought you'd play over the top like you did with 10 years after." So
not what you were expecting to hear, I bet.
no, no, I think the record was called as Fat as It Gets, Pfatt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
saw him. I saw Mountain in 1974. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
a concert with Jay Giles Band.
Oh yes, yeah,
Trying to remember who there were three acts. It wasn't Spooky Tooth. It was oh boy. I forgot who it was, but yeah, I remember that very well. Leslie West and yeah, Mississippi Queen. And, yeah,
yeah,
that was a long time ago.
yeah.
Hey, I don't want to keep you. You mentioned a few things that you have in the works or some things that you're thinking about and anything else that you can share about the future that you either want to reiterate or that you haven't mentioned yet that we could look forward to seeing and hearing from Leo.
Golly, well, I'll try and do something. Probably more writing. Occasionally I'll play on somebody's record, which is, means I don't have to travel. Because traveling's become a pain now, visas and all
Yeah.
those things. And you have to pay money to carnets. You have to pay money on the value of your instruments. You have to pay for the carnet, and so I love playing. I don't want to give up playing. I'm happy to go down the road and stand up and play in a bar. But I was supposed to go to Prague in 2 weeks' time, but I decided not to go because it's flights, and then they wanted me to. It's a record I played on that they want to do a launch, but I thought I've got too much on at the moment to do that. So a book, maybe another record.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone said, "Are you going to do another record?" And I said, "Well, we haven't sold enough of the last one yet." You know, that's the way. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, another record is always something that would be welcomed, but I really hope you'll finish one or two or all three of those books. I just,
I've got to. I've really got to now. I was looking at it today and I'm thinking, yeah, I should finish it. Even if I get someone else to, if I give them what I've written and let them tidy it up and do it. Of course, I don't want someone saying how it was when they weren't there,
yeah.
you know.
Well,
So
maybe,
many,
yeah, maybe you and I can talk about that, as
mm,
told to like somebody else approached me about. Eh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? It's very difficult. Um, to
Writing a
the
book is not difficult. It's knowing what to write. That's that's the hard part.
yes, 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 that's right. And knowing what to leave out. Yeah.
That's really to you. I have one last question for you, Leo.
Okay.
If you can imagine, what would you be if you were not a bass player? Something outside of music.
Oh, golly. Well, at school, I wanted to be a vet,
Really?
a veterinary. Yeah. What put me off was the fact that I had to go to college and I couldn't afford to go to college anyway. And one thing and another, the music crept in. Um, I wanted to be a cop but because I'd had polio as a child. I failed the medical on that. And it's very strange that a lot of my friends now are either cops or vets or doctors, and they all wanted to be musicians. So
Uh,
it's a strange thing. There must be some compassion or common thing between the medical profession or whatever and music. Or maybe it's just to help people because I think music heals the soul. It's a healing thing for if you get it right. Um, but yeah, that's what I probably would have done.
Bass players are helpers also. You know how many times you use the word support when you were describing being a bass player? I
Oh yeah, yeah,
love
yeah.
that. It's, when people say background, bass is not background. I much prefer the word support.
Oh yeah. No, no, I don't. I know. I don't think I ever thought of it as background. I always wanted it to be heard.
Exactly.
The way they mix stuff now, like a wall of sound, with often even if there's a virtuoso, you never hear what they're playing because it's just raw walls and walls of sound.
I think I mentioned Motorhead before. Something you said just reminded me. Did you produce Lemmy?
Started to, yes. A record company asked me to do it, and sometime during the start of the recording, they didn't pay the bills,
Oh,
and the studio kept the tapes, and that was it. But it was interesting. I mean, I knew Lemmy. Lemmy kind of said he really liked my playing, and I think that's why I got asked to produce him. But so I arranged to do the record with them, and I normally like to routine the band before I go in the studio, hear what they're doing, what the songs are, maybe make suggestions and what. So we arranged to do that, and I got down to the rehearsal studio, and the Motorhead crew were there, but none of the band. So I thought this is a little bit weird. Okay, never mind. We're in the studio in 2 days' time. So we go in the studio, and the band are there, and they're setting up, and we're getting the sounds and things. And then one of the guys said, "Oh, Lemmy's not coming. He's ill." So I said, "Oh, okay. Well, the studio time's paid for. Get him on the phone." So he said, "Oh, I'm really ill, man. I can't come in." I said, "Well, don't worry. I'll put the bass on, and then when you feel better and come in tomorrow, you can replace it." Well, he wasn't having that. He was down. Came down.
oh,
He came down and put the bass on, and he was a really nice guy, but he's really intimidating if you didn't know him. A
I
line
saw
of line of coke across the top of the desk. Yeah,
I
and
saw him about a month before he died. There
yeah,
was Bass Player Live was a gathering
yeah,
out in Hollywood, and he was being honored that year, and he was so skinny. He really looked
yes, yeah.
well, very close to the end. Hey, I don't want to end on a downer note here, but
No,
this,
he's great. He did well. He did well, didn't he? From being down to being a celebrity,
you know,
and that was good for him. And he lived the rock and roll lifestyle.
yes, he
Every bar I ever went in, he was propping it up.
did. Leo Lyons. the band 10 years after the re-release of Shush is, I believe that's already been released, right? So that's out now.
I think it came out a week or so ago. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, if you love 10 years after, and who doesn't, it's one more reason it's one more thing to add to your 10 years after collection. Leo, thank you so much. I really
That's my pleasure. My
appreciate
pleasure.
you.
Good to talk to you.
Much luck, continued success to you. And I'm going to say this one more time, get those books done. And I'll
Yes, I will. I will.
it's in your hands. And
Okay.
I hope our paths will cross soon and often and in person.
I hope so. I'm looking at all your gear behind there, see what you're using. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend, and let's play bass.
Okay. Good idea. Forever. Thank you. Bye.
Always great to talk to a bass legend, a blues rock legend, Leo Lyons. Fascinating man, interesting stuff, and I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I enjoyed talking with him. And we will be back next week, getting back to the Tales from the Pit. And like I said at the beginning, this was definitely an interview that I did not want to miss, and I think you can see why. I will see you next week, same time, same place, right back here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. In the meantime, I'm John Leapman. Let's play bass.